So let's do it and get ready to dive back into the world of Greyhawk with all of that new information and also those great plans as well.
Right. So, welcome back to the show, everyone. And we're really excited that you're joining us for another adventure in Greyhawk.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of fun, and you're joining us in the middle of a very exciting journey through time and space, for sure.
So, if you're just tuning in, our characters Finn the Rogue, Barnaby the Fighter, and Jack the Ranger have just made it back to their own time and to the ruined city of Ardia.
That's right, and they've also learned a lot from Ren of the Star, and they also know that they need to figure out how to use those crystals, too, to help them with their goals.
And also, that means that they now have all of these new abilities, and they are also ready for whatever challenges lie ahead of them, too, for sure.
So before we jump back in, let's do a quick recap of what has happened and where we left off before we went on our break, too.
So last time, our heroes were in the past with Ren of the Star, and they learned that they need to travel back to their own time to find the source of a powerful corruption.
Right, and they also learned that they need to figure out how to use those crystals and also how to get back to their own time as well.
And after all that they did, they managed to use their crystals to create a portal, and then they stepped through, and they have now made it back to the ruined city of Ardia.
Yeah, and that city is in their own time, but it's also a place where they need to find the source of that evil and also to figure out what is going on too.
And, also, that is the place they first traveled to when they got sent back in time, and that also makes it that much more intense.
Right. And also they are now level 3 and they have all of those awesome new abilities too as well. So that is always fun.
So now that we're all caught up in, what's happened so far, we can get to the point where our heroes have just stepped out of that time portal.
And as they are doing that, they can also see that they are now in their own time and also that they're standing at the edge of the ruined city of Ardia once more.
And that means that our characters have a big decision to make. Do they explore that ruined city and face the unknown? Or do they try to get some help first?
Yeah, and they also have to figure out how to use those crystals and also what comes next for them and how they will ever get out of all of this mess as well, too.
And also that as they have made it through all of that, it is now time to let our characters make their own choices and see what they want to do next. Oh, go for it.
So, as Jack here, who usually is the first to speak up, he says, guys, I really want to solve this mystery of the ruins just like you guys, but man, we've had quite an adventure, and I can't even remember the last time we slept. I remember that near the town, near the ruins, there's a town called Salt Marsh to the south through the marsh area here.
It's a very relatable feeling, and it makes sense that Jack would want to take a moment to rest and regroup.
Yeah, it's true. It's like after all that time travel and those battles, they're all probably exhausted and also ready for a break, too.
So it sounds like, as Jack, you are saying that you want to solve the mystery, but you also remember that there's a town called Saltmarsh nearby, right?
Right, and it's like before going any further, you're thinking it might be best to head there to get some much needed rest and also some supplies, too.
And, if we connect that to the bigger picture, it's always good to take care of your basic needs before you jump into something big, and a town could help with that.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's get back to the game and see what happens next, and also if the others agree with Jack's plan, too.
Right, so as Finn, I look around at Jack and Barnaby and I say, it's true, we don't have to follow Ren's plan or do anything that we don't want to. We can make our own choices now, and I think we need supplies.
And as Jack, I respond, well, I do remember that there's a port town called Saltmarsh. It's a little inland, and it's probably our best option for getting help and also to see what comes next.
And as Barnaby, I say, yeah, and it also means that we can avoid those swamps and all that brackish water if we go that way, too.
And as Finn, I nod and I say, okay, then it is decided we are heading to Saltmarsh, and then from there, we will decide what we do next. Also, if we even need to come back here, too.
Okay, so now that it's decided that you are going to make your way to Saltmarsh, you start heading inland towards the town, and you are also aware that you have to go through the marshes to get there.
And as you are walking, you start to see the terrain change, and you can feel the mud beneath your feet, and also that the air is getting more and more humid as you step further into that area.
And you can hear the sounds of buzzing insects and also some fra, and then also that there's something out there with you too. I make your way forward.
And then suddenly, a huge giant toad leaps out of the water, and it's got those big teeth and also those long and sticky tongue too, and also, it does not look friendly either.
Okay, so you have now encountered that giant toad, and you are all ready for the fight that is about to begin, and also to make use of all of those new abilities, too.
Yeah, and now we're ready for that action, and also for you to use your skills and your powers to take down that giant toad, and also to make your way to Saltmarsh as well, too. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So, well, I guess we have to roll combat initiative.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And you're right. It does sound like it's time for us to roll initiative.
Absolutely. And now that we've encountered that giant toad, it's time to see who goes first as we jump right into the fight.
So yeah, it's time to get ready for battle and also to roll those initiative dice to see how it all plays out for real, too.
And, also to see if that giant toad is going to use that tongue right away, and he'll be able to deal with that too.
Right, so let's go ahead and roll for initiative, and then we'll be ready for the next. Oh, yeah. Go on.
So the giant toad got a 6 on its initiative, and Jack got a 4. And what is Finn and Barnaby?
Okay, yeah, that's great to know, and thanks for sharing those results so we can get the initiative order figured out.
Right, so you're saying the giant toad got a 6 and Jack got a 4, and that you're also wondering about Barnaby's initiative, too, so let's do that now.
So I will roll for Barnaby's initiative, and then we'll see how it all lays out, and also who is going to go first in this fight too.
Okay, and while you're doing that, I will also make sure that we remember all those important details about that toad and that tongue attack as well, too.
Okay, so I just rolled a 7 for Barnaby, and that means that he'll be going right before the giant toad, for sure, which is interesting.
And also to remember that Finn has a really high initiative, so she will be going before everyone else in the fight here, too.
Right, so that means that Finn will be going first, then Barnaby, then the giant toad, and then Jack will be bringing up the rear this time too.
And also, we do need to remember that the toad is going to try and use its tongue on the first round, and then it's also going to have the bite, too.
So yeah, we are ready to go, and also that we have all of that information to start the combat and to see what happens next too.
Okay, so with that all in place, let's get ready for this fight and to see how it plays out with all of our new abilities, too.
And now,
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
All right, so Finn, it's Finn's action. What's Finn gonna do?
Okay, yeah, I hear you. And it's time to see what Finn is going to do with that high initiative score for sure.
right, and we also need to remember that giant toad is ready to use that big tongue too, so it's going to be a really interesting first move for sure.
So with that in mind, and since Finn has that highest initiative score, it's time to see what she does as she steps forward for this fight.
And also, we need to remember that Finn also has all of those awesome new abilities and that she is ready to make use of them as well too.
Well, as Finn, and knowing that I'm going first, and also that the giant toad is going to use that tongue attack, I'm going to try and get out of the way and also to make a good first attack.
Okay, so it sounds like you're going to try and use your cunning action to move to a safer position and also to try and get an attack in as well too, which is a good plan.
Right, and as I'm moving, I'm going to pull out my dagger, and I am going to also strike as quickly as I can, before that toad can do anything too.
Okay, so you're using your cunning action to move and also your action to attack. What did you roll to see if you hit the giant toad?
Well, I rolled a 14, and with that dexterity modifier of +4, that gives me an 18, which is a hit on the toad for sure.
Okay, that is a really great start. You've managed to hit the toad, and also that means you get to roll that sneak attack damage too, right?
Right, and since I'm level 3, that's an extra 2d6 to my damage too, and that's going to give that dagger attack a lot more power. Let's see.
Okay, yeah, roll that damage. Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
Well, it's not only a sneak attack, but isn't it also an assassination? It's the first round, and the toad hasn't gone yet.
Oh, that's a really excellent point, and it's true that we need to remember that new assassinate ability.
Yeah, you're right. With that first attack and the toad not going yet, it does sound like it would trigger that ability too.
Okay, so let's unpack this. You're saying that since this is the first round and the toad hasn't acted yet, that attack from Finn is both a sneak attack and also an assassination, right?
And if we think about it, that does make a lot of sense given how those two abilities actually work together.
Right. It's like it's not just a regular sneak attack, but also a surprise attack too. And that is a really powerful combination to remember.
And it's also good to realize that this is the first time that we get to use that new assassinate ability, so we should make sure it is correct too.
So with that in mind, let's see, it does mean that if the attack hits, then it should be a critical hit with all that extra damage, right?
Yes, and we should also remember that that does not mean it will get extra damage, but it will mean that we will roll all of the damage dice twice, and also get to add those extra modifiers.
Okay, so with that new information, let's see, and now that I have rolled an 18 to hit with the dagger, that does also mean that I get to do a critical hit with it too.
And that also means that since it's a sneak attack, you will get that 2d6 extra damage. And with that crit, we will need to roll all of that twice too, it seems.
Okay,
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
So all together, what is Finn rolling?
okay, yeah, that's a great question, and it's totally understandable that you want to know all the details of that attack and what I'm rolling.
You're right. It can be a lot to keep track of with all those different abilities. So let's break it down and make it clear.
So you're asking about the damage that Finn does and what dice and modifiers are used when... Oh, back to our listener. What's
Well,
up?
We went over that already. So what's the total? Is it what 3D 66? I mean, it sounds like you're rolling doubles and you're rolling a lot of dice. What is the total that you're gonna roll for this attack?
You're right. We did go over the details, but it's easy to get lost in all the dice rolls. Let's get you the final number.
Yeah, and you're right. There were a lot of dice involved, so I'll give you the total for that attack.
So first, for the base damage from the dagger, you roll a d4 and you double it since it's a critical hit.
And I rolled a 2, which doubles to 4, and that's the base damage for this attack for Finn.
Right, and then for the sneak attack damage, that's where you get 2 extra d6s, and you also have to double that as well for the crit.
And for those 2d6, I rolled a 5, and then a 3, which adds up to 8, and then double that is 16 for all the sneak attack dice together.
So that means the base damage is 4, and the sneak attack is 16, and that brings the total to 20 so far.
And then I have to remember that I also add my dexterity modifier, which is +4.
Right, and that +4 is added to that 20 to get the grand total.
So when you add that +4, the grand total of that attack is 24 damage to that giant toad for real that time.
Okay, that is a lot of damage, and it's a really great opening with that sneak attack and that critical hit, and also those new skills too.
Yeah, that means I had a great opening move, and also that the giant toad has taken 24 points of damage too.
Okay, yeah, that's a really awesome way to kick off the fight, and also to show what those new abilities can do too. And it is a lot of damage, for real too.
So yeah, that means I was able to move and also to get that big, powerful attack in as well. And that also makes Finn even more powerful too. That's a lot of damage.
Okay, so that means that you did a total of 24 damage to the toad, which is a lot. And it means that you were able to not only move, but also you were able to do a lot of damage to that big toad too. Good job.
So yeah, I moved out of the way, and I also managed to do a good amount of damage too, and now it's Barnaby's turn as well.
And with that big first move from Finn, it's now time to see what Barnaby does as he steps forward to face that huge giant toad as well too, for sure.
So until then, keep those dice rolling, and also get ready to see what happens next, and also to see what is going to come with this amazing white too.
And now that we have that all set up, it's time for you to get ready for the next phase of the show, and we'll see you all again next time too.
Yeah,
Well, we won't see him next time. We're gonna roll Barnaby's attack roll here, or whatever it is Barnaby chooses to do.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. And you're right, we're not going to see him next time. We need to roll for Barnaby's action right now.
Absolutely, it's time to get back to the game and to see what Barnaby does now that he's up, and also that Finn had such a great opening too.
Well, as Barnaby, I am looking at the giant toad, and I remember that it is going to try and use that tongue on me, so I have to be ready and use my abilities.
And with that in mind, you are ready to make your move, but you are also aware that that big, wet tongue is about to come right at you too. So what do you do next as you step into the fray?
Okay, so as Barnaby, and with all of that in mind, I am ready to step forward and see what this giant toad has planned for me too.
Right, and you remember that you have those action surges, so it's time to see if you can use those to your advantage here.
Well, I know that this toad is going to try and grab me with that tongue, so I want to be ready and see what I can do, and also I want to show them all what I can do too.
Okay, so you're ready to face that big tongue and also to make a strong first move as well, and also to try and take that creature out too.
So since the toad is going to try and grapple me, I'm going to use my action to attack, and I'll try to hit him as hard as I can to try and keep him off balance.
Okay, that's a really smart move, and it's a good way to try and get the jump on that toad before he can use his tongue to grab you.
And also, as a third-level fighter, I'm also going to use one of my action surges to hit him again, too, so I will do an extra attack at the same time.
That's a fantastic way to use those action surges, and also to show that you're not messing around, and that you are ready for a big fight, for sure.
Okay, so I'm swinging my longsword, and also I will add that modifier for my strength, and then I'll see what happens with those dice too.
Right, and it's also important to remember that the toad does not have any special armor, so your attacks should be a little easier for you too.
Okay, so I just rolled a 15 for my first attack, and with my +3 strength bonus, that's an 18, which is a hit on the toad for sure.
And for my second attack, using that action surge, I roll a 10, and with that +3 modifier, that's a 13 to hit, and that will also hit the toad as well too.
Okay, so you've managed to hit with both of your attacks, so that means that you are also going to be able to roll all of that damage as well too.
Yeah, so you're ready, you've hit twice, and now it's time to roll that damage and to also see what those new attacks can do, for real.
Okay, so for the first attack, I rolled a 6, plus my modifier of +3, that's 9 points of damage.
Okay, that's a good hit, and then for your second attack, you'll roll that again and see what you get too, right?
Right, for that second attack, I rolled a 3, and with my +3 modifier, that's 6 points of damage from that second attack too.
Okay, so with that all in mind, you were able to hit with both attacks, and you did a lot of damage, and you are ready for the fight, for sure.
Right, so that means the giant toad has now taken 15 points of damage from both of those attacks before it has a chance to attack us, and that's good too.
Yeah, and that shows that Barnaby is a powerful fighter, and also that he's more than ready to face this toad and anything else that comes next too.
So with that in mind,
Hey, yeah, what's up?
So with that, that's a total of 39 points of damage in those first two attacks from Finn and Barnaby, which manages to slay the toad. But it turns out that that toad was just the female, and the male, seeing you attacking and killing its partner, comes stomping through the trees of the marsh towards us. And there's another toad we have to fight, and it's its turn.
okay, wow, that is a twist. It seems that giant toad wasn't alone after all.
Yeah, and it sounds like that first toad was just the female, and that a much angrier male is now stomping through the marsh towards you.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that after all that damage from Finn and Barnaby, the giant toad they were fighting is now dead.
And also that another giant toad is coming out of the marsh, and it's now ready to go, and it is also angrier too, so now it's even worse.
Right, and it definitely means that the fight isn't over, and that our characters are still in a lot of danger right now too.
And also, if we connect that to the bigger picture, it means that this fight has just gotten even more intense and also a lot more challenging too.
Okay, so that changes things. And also, it makes sense that the other toad's going to want revenge and all of that too, for sure.
Yeah, and now that we've got that all set, let's get back to it and also see how our character...
Oh, go for it.
So that giant toad that comes stomping through the forest there, the trees, the marsh, and it's gonna roll an 8 to try to put a tongue attack on Barnaby. Add the 3, that makes it 11, and that doesn't seem to be enough to hit the AC on Barnaby.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point. And it's good to remember that you are taking all of these details in too.
Right, it's important to be accurate about all of these rolls, and also what happens when that toad attacks Barnaby too.
So you're saying that the giant toe is going to try a tongue attack on Barnaby, and it rolled an 8, plus it's 3 to hit, for a total of 11.
Right, and with that 11, it's also important to remember that he is not enough to hit Barnaby's AC, which is 18.
And, that's a good reminder that even with that initial grapple, there is still a chance that the attack might miss, for sure, and that Barnaby is very well protected.
So with that in mind, we can see that the giant toad's tongue attack on Barnaby has missed, and also that he has managed to avoid that grapple too, for sure.
And, it also means, yep, go on.
And with that, Jack is going to take his short bow and take a shot at the giant toad. It's going to hit with a 17 and do 3 points of piercing damage.
Okay, that's a really great move from Jack, and it's good to see him jumping into the fight so quickly.
Yeah, it's like before the toad can do anything, Jack is already taking aim and firing that arrow, and he manages to get a good hit.
So you're saying that Jack used his bow, and he rolled a 17 to hit, and then that did 3 points of piercing damage to that giant toad, right?
Right, and it does make sense that he would take that opportunity to get an attack in while the toad is still focused on Barnaby, too.
And, if we...
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
And that'll take us back to the top of combat, so it's Finn's turn again.
Okay, yeah, I hear you, and it's true. That does take us back to the top of the combat rounds, for sure.
Right, so we need to remember that Finn's up again, and also that the giant toad is looking pretty angry, too.
So it's like we've gone through one round, and now we are starting again with Finn at the top, and we're all ready to see what she's going to do next.
And also that Jack did get that hit in, too, and that means that the giant toad is now taking some damage from that as well, too, and that's a good way to start off this round again.
Okay, so now that we have that all figured out, let's see what Finn does, and also how she's going to use all of her new abilities, too, as well.
Right, and with that in mind and with all of that tension, it's time to see what Finn does to follow up that great opening move, and also how she deals with all the chaos, too.
So now that I'm back in the game as Finn, and seeing that the toad is still looking angry, I am ready to make my next move, and also to try to help Barnaby as well.
And, you also have those daggers, and also those new skills, too, and you're ready to do that sneak attack as well, if you get the chance to, for sure.
Okay, so since the toad has...
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, I was about to ask. So, since this toad is definitely zeroed in on us, is Finn going to be able to make a sneak attack? Are the conditions right for that?
Oh, that's a very good question. And it's true, we should think about if Finn can use a sneak attack here.
You're right. With the toad now focused on you, it's a good thing to consider if those conditions for a sneak attack are going to be met, for sure.
Okay, so let's unpack this. You're wondering if Finn will be able to use her sneak attack this turn, since the toad is now focused on all of us, and she does not have the advantage, right?
And, if we think about it, it is not just about surprise, but also about taking advantage of a vulnerable position, too.
And it's important to remember that we did say before that you get a sneak attack when the target is distracted, or when you have advantage too.
Right, and it's also true that she needs to have a finesse weapon or a range weapon for it, and also to remember all of those important details, too.
Well, as Finn, I'm always aware of my surroundings, and I'm also trying to find a way to use those abilities and also to keep myself safe too, for real.
So yeah, with that in mind, it's time to see what Finn does, and also how she is going to use that sneak attack, if she can, in this moment, too.
So I move into position, and then I attack with my dagger, and I just rolled a 19, which is amazing, and also I'm adding my +4 too.
Wow, that's an amazing roll, and it means you have a 23 to hit, and it's also a critical hit since it was also an assassination, too.
Right, and with that, and with the critical hit, it means I get to double all of those damage dice for my attack. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, it wasn't an assassination because we're now in the second round of combat, right?
You are absolutely correct, and it's really good that you're keeping us on track with that detail.
Yeah, we totally appreciate you catching that. It is easy to get carried away with the excitement of the game.
So let's unpack this. You're reminding us that since we're now in the second round of combat, the assassinate ability wouldn't apply, right?
Right, because that only works if it's the first round, and the toad is not acted yet. So you are right. It is just a sneak attack, not an assassination too.
And it's important to remember.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
And to be a sneak attack, it has to be essentially what we used to call an attack of opportunity back in the day. And do we have conditions to meet that? Can you argue that this is indeed a sneak attack and not just a regular attack against a giant toad charging at you?
That's a really great question, and it's good to think about what makes a sneak attack a sneak attack.
Yeah, you're right. It's important to understand the conditions for using that ability, and it's not just a free attack either.
So let's unpack this. You're asking if a sneak attack is like an attack of opportunity, and if there are conditions that we have to meet for it to actually trigger, right?
And also, if we can argue that this is a sneak attack and not just a regular attack against that toad, since it is very aware of us now, too.
Well, first, a sneak attack isn't quite the same as an attack of opportunity in the classic sense, so there are some similarities.
Right, and unlike an attack of opportunity, which is a reaction, a sneak attack uses your action on your turn.
And also that a sneak attack, it requires you to have an advantage, or also for one of your allies to be adjacent to the target too.
Yeah, it's true. It's not just about being sneaky,
Hmm.
but also about taking advantage of a vulnerable position too, and that makes it different.
So, if
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Well, I think you got it right there. Since the Toad was engaged in battle with Barnaby, it would be a sneak attack then.
that's a really good point. And it's true that detail about the toad being engaged with Barnaby is important here.
Yeah, it's like since the toad was focused on Barnaby, it means that you are able to use that sneak attack for sure. And it's also great to see how all of this works too.
So you're saying that since the toad was engaged with the Barnaby, that does make Finn's attack a sneak attack. And that's a great thing to remember too in this fight.
And also, it makes sense that you had that advantage or that you were in a position to take advantage of the situation and to use all of your skills there too.
Right, and it is true that does give you that extra damage, and now that we are clear on all of that, it is time to see what that total is, for real too.
Okay, so now that we've got all of that cleared up and we know that is indeed a sneak attack and not an assassination, it's time to see what that damage is for Finn, for real this time.
And it's also important to remember that we are all working together, and that we also have that information about the tongue attack too, as well. That could come into play.
Right, so you rolled a 19 to hit, and with that +4 to dexterity, that's a 23, and that means that is a hit, and also that you are ready to do some damage too.
Okay, so with that 23 to hit, that is amazing, and it means it's time for you to roll those damage dice and see what you do with all of that power too.
So for that base damage, I rolled a 2, and then I add the 2d6 from that sneak attack, and I rolled a 5 and a 3, that is a total of 10, plus my modifier is 14 damage to the toad.
Okay, that's a really good hit, and you have done a lot more damage, and you are making a difference in this fight with those sneak attack abilities for sure.
Yeah, and also it is good to know that even though it's not that critical hit, that sneak attack damage is still very useful, and it is also important too.
Right, so it's like you managed to use those skills and also to put the toad in a more vulnerable spot, and also to give Barnaby a chance to do his best too.
And now that I have moved and attacked, it is time to see what Barnaby does next, and also how he is going to follow up on all that too.
And also, it is now time to see if Barnaby is going to use that action surge, and also how he's going to try to avoid the tongue and also help Finn at the same time too.
Okay, so with that all in mind, let's see what Barnaby does to make sure that you're all going to be safe and that you're ready for the rest of this fight.
So yeah, now that Finn has made that move, it's time for Barnaby to take his turn and show off his skills and all of those new abilities too, for sure. So what do you do?
Well, as Barnaby, I am still aware that the toad is going to try and use that tongue on me, so I want to be ready. And also, I want to show them all what I can do, too.
Okay, so you're ready to face that big tongue and also to make a strong first move as well, and also to try and take that creature out too.
So since the toad is going to try and grapple me, I'm going to use my action to attack, and I'll try to hit him as hard as I can to try and keep him off balance.
Okay, that's a really smart move, and it's a good way to try and get the jump on that toad before he can use his tongue to grab you.
And also, as a third-level fighter, I am also going to use one of my action surges to hit him again, too, so I will do an extra attack at the same time.
That's a fantastic way to use those action surges, and also to show that you're not messing around and that you are ready for a big fight, for sure.
Okay, so I just rolled a 12 and a 15 with my 2 attacks. And with my +3 strength bonus, that's a 15 and 18, both hits on the toad.
Okay, that is a great attack, and it means that you have managed to hit the toad, and also that you're about to do some serious damage too now.
So for that first attack, I rolled a 5. And with my +3 modifier, that makes 8 points of damage. And then for my second attack, I rolled a 2 plus a +3 modifier, that makes 5 damage.
Okay, so with that all in mind, you were able to hit with both attacks, and you did a lot of damage, and you are ready for the fight for sure.
Right, so that means the giant toad has now taken 13 more points of damage from both of those attacks before it has a chance to attack us, and that's good too.
Yeah, and that shows that Barnaby is a powerful fighter, and also that he's more than ready to face this toad and anything else that comes next too.
So with that in mind, I have used my action and my action surge. And now it's time for the toad to see.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
So the Toad once again goes for the tongue attack on Barnaby, and it is a miss.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point to clarify. It's true that the giant toad is going to try that tongue attack again.
Right, and it seems like that toad is really focused on Barnaby now, and also that it is still trying to use that tongue to grab him too.
So you're saying that the giant toad, after taking all that damage, is still going for the tongue attack on Barnaby, and that this time it missed, right?
Right, and also that all of that damage from Finn and Barnaby did not keep him from doing what he was going to try to do as well, too.
And also that means that the toad was not able to grab you. And it is also now time to see what happens next with all of that. Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
So Jack tries to use his bow again, and he goes to fire off an arrow, and he rolls a 1, critical miss, and it snaps his bowstring, so his bow is completely useless now, and no attack.
Oh, wow. That's a really unfortunate turn of events. And a critical miss is always a bit of a setback.
Yeah, it's true. It seems like Jack's attempt to fire that arrow is backfired in a pretty dramatic way, too.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that Jack tried to shoot again, but he rolled a 1 and he snapped his bowstrings, and now that bow is totally useless.
Right, and that's a pretty big problem since Jack was relying on that bow for his attacks, and it was also giving him a good position from up on those barrels.
What's fascinating here is this really does show how things can change so quickly, and also that we need to be ready for anything too.
Yeah, and it's true that a critical miss is never fun, but now we need to see what happens next and how Jack is going to deal with that. Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
Well, going into our third round of combat, it goes back to Finn.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. And it's time to see what Finn does now that we're back at the top of the order.
Right, and it's also important to remember that Jack's bow is broken and that the toad is still looking angry too.
And with that in mind, and with the toad still a threat and Jack's bow now useless, it's Finn's turn, and we're all ready to see what she does.
Well, as Finn, I can see that Barnaby and Jack are both in danger, and also that the toad is probably going to try to go for Barnaby again too.
And with that in mind, you are ready to take that next step and also to use all of those great new skills and abilities that you have too.
So I'm going to use my cutting action to move again, and also to try and get a better angle on the toad, and then use that to strike as well too.
Okay, that's a really smart move, and it's also good to keep in mind that you are not going to be standing still, but always moving too. That is good.
And with that new position, I'm going to attack with my dagger again, and also I will do that sneak attack to try and get that toad down for good.
Okay, you're using that cutting action, and also you're using that sneak attack, and it's time to see if you can do some more damage with all of that too.
So I just rolled a 17, and with my dexterity modifier, that's a 21, and that is going to hit the toad again for sure, and that is also a sneak attack too.
That's another amazing hit, and you are hitting that toad with everything that you have, and that sneak attack is going to make all the difference, for real.
Okay, so now I'm going to roll for all of that damage, and I am ready to see how much that sneak attack is going to do this time too, for sure.
Right, and also it's good to remember that you're using that dagger, and also that that sneak attack damage is also coming into play as well too.
So for that base damage, I rolled a 2, and for that sneak attack with those 2d6, I rolled a 5 and a 4, which is 11, for a total of 13 damage to the toad.
Okay, that's another really great attack, and you've done another 13 points of damage, and it also means that Toad is now looking very hurt too.
Yeah, and also I have managed to move, and I also managed to get a good attack in, and also to stay safe too as well, for sure. Ah, yeah,
Yeah, that toad is very hurt, but it's not dead yet. This male toad is a little beefier than the female one we fought at first.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point, and it's true. That toad is still hanging in there even after all that damage.
You're right, and it does seem like this male Toad is a bit tougher than the female that we faced earlier.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that even after taking those hits from Finn, the male toad is still up, and it's definitely a little beefier, for sure.
And if we think about it, that is totally true, and it means that it will take even more to bring this one down too.
Right, so it's not over yet, and we can't get too comfortable, even though we did do a lot of damage in that first round.
And it's also a good reminder that even with all of your new abilities, that some enemies are going to be tougher than others, and that you will need to adapt to.
Okay, so with that new information about that toad's toughness, let's get back to the game and also to see what Barnaby's going to do next.
Right, so now that Finn has gone and has also made that new attack, it is Barnaby's turn, and it's time to see how he is going to follow that up and also to see if he can get that toad for good.
And also, we can't forget that he is probably still going to try and use that tongue attack on Barnaby again, too, so be ready for that.
So with all of that in mind, and also that the toad is still looking very angry, it's time to see what Barnaby will do to take that toad down for good.
Okay, so now, as Barnaby, I am back in the fight. I've avoided that tongue, and I'm still looking at this giant toad, and I'm ready to make my move.
And you know that you have all of that power with the fighter class and also with those new skills, too, that you want to try and use again.
Yeah, so I will use my action, and then also I'm gonna use my action Surge, and also to try and hit that giant toad as hard as I can, too.
Okay, so you're using both attacks, and you're not going to hold back. You are ready to take that toad down for good this time.
So I rolled a 14 and a 15 with my 2 attacks, and with my +3 strength bonus, that is going to be a 17 and 18 to hit. Both of those hit.
Okay, yeah, that is a great roll, and both of those are hits. Hey, yeah, what's up?
So you're Barnaby's only going to get one attack because he's already used two action surges on the first 2 rounds, and he has to take a short rest before he can use them again. So he only gets his first attack.
Oh, that's a really important point, and you're absolutely right to remind us of that limitation.
Yeah, we totally forgot that Barnaby had already used both of his action surges, so thanks for keeping us on track.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that Barnaby can only use one attack because he has already used both of his action surges, and now he needs to take a short rest to use them again, right?
Right, and it's true, we did get a little carried away and forgot that he had already used those action surges, and he does need to rest to use them again, too.
And it's also you to remember that those action surges are really powerful, but you can't just use them all the time either, and you do need to be careful as well.
Okay, so with that in mind, and also that we are now remembering all the rules and also all that important information, too, let's get back to Barnaby's turn for real this time.
So as Barnaby, you are ready to go, and you remember that you don't have another action surge, so you will just use your action to attack, and that is it for this turn.
Right, and also that means that I'm going to attack with my longsword. Oh, go for it.
Yep, that's right. You attack with your longsword, you get 1 hit in, and roll up the damage for that longsword attack.
Okay, yeah, I hear you, and it's time to just see what Barnaby does with that one single longsword attack now.
Right, and it's true, he's not going to use his action surge, but he is still going to swing that sword with a lot of power, too.
So with that in mind, you're ready to roll for that attack, and then also for the damage too, right?
Right, so I rolled a 15 for that attack, and with my +3 modifier, that's a total of 18, so it is a hit.
Okay, that's a solid hit, and now it's time to see how much damage you're going to do with that one sword attack.
So I just rolled a 6 for the damage, and with my +3 strength, that is a total of 9 points of damage to the giant toad.
Okay, that's a really good hit, and it does mean that you have done a pretty decent amount of damage, and you have now wounded that giant toad as well too.
So with that, I've used all my attacks, and I've done all that I can, and now it's time to see what the toad will do next.
Yep, go on.
So the giant toad, which is looking weakened, but it's still alive, it lashes out with its tongue, and it rolled a 17 plus its 3 base attack, gives it 20 to wrap its tongue around Barnaby.
Okay, yeah, that's a big hit, and it sounds like that toad is still dangerous.
Right, it seems that even though it's weakened, it still has some fight left, and that tongue is a big threat.
So you're saying that the giant toad rolled a 17 plus its +3 base attack bonus for a total of 20, and that is enough to wrap its tongue around Barnaby, right?
Yeah, it's like after all of that, the toad has finally managed to grab someone with that tongue attack, and it's Barnaby this time, for sure.
And also, it's important to remember, when the toad gets you with that tongue, it does that 2d4 damage automatically, too. So that means Barnaby is taking some damage now.
So now we have to roll that 2d4 and see how much damage Barnaby is going to take with that tongue as he is pulled towards that big mouth as well.
Right, and also, we need to remember that Barnaby is now grappled, and he will need to...
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
So rolling that 2d4, the toad got a 4 and a 3, so that's a total of 7 points of damage to Barnaby.
Okay, yeah, that's a good roll for the toad, and it means Barnaby is taking a decent amount of damage from that tongue attack.
Right, so that means that Barnaby has now taken 7 points of damage as he's being pulled closer, and also, now it's time for him to make a move and try to get out of there.
So now that, oh, go for
Well,
it.
no, not yet. It's going to be an automatic grapple, and on Barnaby's next turn, he can try to break out of it and break free.
Okay, yeah, that's a really helpful clarification. And you're right, it is an automatic grapple on this turn, and it's good to remember the nuances here.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is an automatic grapple, and we shouldn't forget that detail about the rules for that attack. Thanks for keeping us on track.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that the grapple is automatic this turn, and it's only on Barnaby's next turn that he gets to try and break free of that tongue, right?
Right, it's like for this round, the toad's tongue has got him, and he just has to take the damage, and then on his next turn, he gets his chance to try and escape, for sure. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So Jack, seeing that his bow is useless, drops it down into the marsh water and draws his short sword and takes a swing at the giant toad and unfortunately misses.
Okay, yeah, that's a really interesting move from Jack, and it shows he's not giving up even with that broken bow.
Right, it's like he's not just going to stand there and do nothing, but he is trying to get back into the fight with his other weapons, too, for sure.
So you're saying that Jack has dropped his broken bow in the water, and then he's drawn a short sword to take a swing at the giant toad, but he missed, right?
Right, and it's also a good reminder that even when you try your best, you are not always going to hit, even with that determination as well, too.
And also, that means that Jack has used his action, and it is now time to see what happens next, and also how Barnaby's going to try and break free from that tongue, too.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
So that brings us to the top of the fourth round, and it'll be Finn's turn once again.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. And you're right, that does take us back to the top of the round, and it's Finn's turn once more.
Right, and it's important to remember that Barnaby is now grappled, and also that Jack is without his bow now, too.
So, with that in mind, and with all that tension, it is now time to see what Finn does to make a difference in this fight.
And also, it's good to know that she is ready to go, and that she has all those new skills and abilities to help her, too.
So now that we are back at the top of the round, it's time for Finn to take the lead and also to see what she does in this new phase of the fight.
Well, as Finn, I can see that Barnaby is still caught by the tongue, and also that Jack is trying to get back into the fight, too, so I'm ready to help them both.
And, also that you have all of those abilities that you have been using and that you are able to move around quickly too. So what is your plan?
Okay, so I'm going to try to get a good angle on the toad, and also to try and do a sneak attack, and also to do what I can to help Barnaby, too.
Right. So you're using your cutting action to move into a new position and also to try and get that advantage for your attack too.
And with that, oh yeah, let's hear it.
And being that the toad is grappling Barnaby, if you get a successful hit, it would be a sneak attack.
That's a very good point, and you're right to consider the conditions for that sneak attack.
Yeah, it's true. With the toad grappling Barnaby, that does open up an opportunity for a sneak attack, and we need to keep that in mind.
So you're saying that since the toad is grappling Barnaby, that would mean that Finn is able to do a sneak attack on it too, right?
Right, and it's like with the toad occupied, it's not really focused on Finn, so that means that we get that sneak attack damage.
And also, if we connect that to the bigger picture, that's a good reminder to look for all of those different opportunities to really make those attacks more powerful too.
It's true, and now that we've clarified that, let's get back to the game and see how Finn uses this to her advantage.
Okay, so now that we've taken that all into account, and also that we remember all the rules of the fight, let's get back to the action.
Right, so as Finn, and also with all of that in mind, I am now ready to make my move, and I'll also be ready to try and help Barnaby as well, too.
And it's also important to remember that you still have that crystal, and also that it could still be used in all of this too.
Okay, so I'm going to move, and I'm going to attack with my dagger. And since the toad is grappling Barnaby, that means that is also a sneak attack for sure.
Right, so you're using that cutting action to get into position, and then you're making that attack, and now it's time to see what you roll.
Okay, so I just rolled a 17, and with my +4 dexterity modifier,
They
that's a
always roll high.
21,
They're
and that's
cheating.
definitely going to hit the toad again, too.
Yeah, that was a great hit, and now it's time to roll that damage, and also to add that extra sneak attack damage too, for sure. So let's see what you get.
Okay, so for that base damage, I rolled a 4, and then for that sneak attack damage with those 2d6, I rolled a 3 and a 5, which is 8, for a total of 12, plus my modifier for a total of 16 damage.
Yeah, that is a really great hit, and it means that you have been able to get in there with your sneak attack and do even more damage to that giant toad.
Okay, and also, that is a good reminder to always use those sneak attacks when you have a good opportunity, too, for sure.
And also that it is now time for Barnaby to try to break free, or else that toad's going to have another chance to bite him for real this time.
Yeah, and also, we can't forget about Jack either, who has that broken bow, and also is getting ready to do whatever he can to help as well.
So with that new... Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
So basically, Barnaby, he's got his one thing that he can do. He's got to try and break that hold, that grapple with the strength check, and he's got to go higher than a 10. And you know what, he's got to break free, or he's going to take that bite.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And it's good to remember that it's all up to Barnaby to try and break free from that tongue now.
You're right. And with all of... Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
And I'm also going to take this to mention real quick. I noticed you guys have been having some real good rolls. I haven't seen you guys do a bad roll in a while. I'm wondering if you might be fudging your dice over there.
Oh, that's a very interesting thing to bring up. And it's true. We have been having some pretty good rolls lately.
Yeah, it's funny. It does feel like the dice have been on our side for sure recently, with those higher numbers coming up for everyone.
So let's unpack this. You're wondering if we might be fudging our dice because we've been getting a lot of good rolls and also not many bad ones lately, right?
And, I can understand why you might be thinking that. It does seem a little suspicious when the numbers are so good, and also that we are all so good too right now.
Well, I can assure you that we are not fudging any. Oh, back to our listener. What's
Well,
up?
yeah, I mean, we are on the honor system. We can't see what each other is rolling, so we have to take it with faith. But I just noticed that you guys have been doing exceptionally well since we started playing.
You're right. We are our honor system, and we appreciate you bringing that up, and also for being so invested in the game too.
And it is true. We have been having some amazing rolls. And we can only say that, sometimes luck is just on your side for a little while at least.
And also that sometimes, you have those moments where everything just works and all the dice just seem to fall in your favor too. So that's fun while it lasts.
And also sometimes, the dice just fall in your favor. And we are also excited to see that too when we are all doing well together.
But you are right that we should also be ready for those roles to change and also for us to see what happens if they start to go the other way too, for sure.
Right. So we promise that we are not fudging anything and that we're just playing the game. And it just so happens that we've all been having a good run for now. And that is that.
And with that in mind, I think it's time for us to get back to the game and to see what happens next with that big tongue attack and with Barnaby trying to escape too.
Okay. So with that all said, and also that question answered too, we can get ready to see if Barnaby can pull free from that tongue and see what comes next for all of us.
Right. So as Barnaby, you are still caught by that tongue, and you are remembering that you need a 10 or higher to escape, and also that you are going to use your strength.
So I am focusing all of my strength and I'm doing my best to pull myself away from that tongue and also to try and avoid that big mouth too as well.
Okay, so with that in mind, you are ready to roll, and it's time to see if you are able to pull free from that tongue with all of your strength.
Okay, so I just rolled a 15 with my strength check, and with my +3 strength modifier, that's a total of 18, so I have managed to pull away from that tongue.
Wow, that's a really great roll, and you've definitely managed to break free from that grapple and that tongue that has been trying to get you all this time, too.
So that means I was able to use my strength. And with that roll, I'm no longer caught in that tongue, and I'm also free from that danger. Ah, yeah.
You've broken free, and that is your action for that round. So that's the end for Barnaby, and now it's the Toad's turn again.
Hey, yeah, what's up?
And that Toad, he rolled a 19 plus 3, that's 22. And as soon as Barnaby breaks free from that tongue, it just snaps it right out and wraps him right back up again. He's going to take 2d4 damage again from the grapple attack, automatic grapple attack. And my dice fell on the floor. Let's see. Okay, 5 points of damage.
Okay, yeah, that's a wild turn of events. And it's true that you can't catch a break, it seems, now with that giant toad.
Right, and that is a good reminder that this toad is still very dangerous, and it is not going to give up that easily either.
So you're saying that after Barnaby breaks free, the toad immediately lashes out with its tongue again, and then it has rolled a 22 to grapple him back, right?
Yeah, and that 22 is enough to hit, and it is clear that he's not able to get away from that giant tongue after all.
And also that with that automatic grapple, Barnaby has taken another 5 points of damage from that tongue as well, too. And you had to roll the dice on the floor for that, too.
Okay, and now that we have all of that in mind, and also that Barnaby has been hit again, that is a lot to deal with, and it means we should get back to the action, for sure.
Oh, go for it.
And getting back to the action, it's going to be Jack's turn again, and he's going to actually use his hunter's mark this time before he strikes. So what kind of bonuses is that going to give him on his attack?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And it's good to see Jack is remembering all of his abilities, even with that broken bow.
Right, and it's true, we haven't seen him use Hunter's Mark yet, so now is the perfect time to see what it can do in this fight.
So let's unpack this. You're asking what kind of bonuses Jack will get on his attack now that he is using Hunter's Mark, right?
And if we think about it, it is a bonus action to cast, so he has to do that, and also that it is a way for him to do more damage with his attacks, too.
Well, as we talked about before, Hunter's Mark allows Jack to add an extra 1d6 of damage to his attack. But it is not a to-hit bonus, though.
Right, it's just for damage, and also that he has to use that bonus action to get it on the target first, and also that it has to be a specific target, too.
So yeah, that means that Jack is going to be able to add that extra damage to his attack roll, and also he's going to use that short sword too now that his bow is gone.
And that is also a way to make use of his skills and abilities, and also to be ready to get back into the fight, and also to help Barnaby as well, for sure.
Okay, so with that in mind,
Yep, go on.
Yeah, so with that in mind, Jack rolls a 22 to hit with his short sword, well, adjusted to 22. And he does 6 points of damage, plus with his hunter's mark does another 2, so that'll be 8 points of damage in total.
okay, yeah, that's fantastic. And it's great to see Jack getting a good hit in and making use of that Hunter's Mark.
Right, and it's also good to know that Jack is now getting back into the fight, and that he's not letting that broken bow stop him either.
So you're saying that Jack rolled a 22 to hit and that he did 6 points of damage with the sword and then an extra 2 from Hunter's Mark for a total of 8 damage, right?
Yeah, that's a solid hit, and it also means that the giant toad is still taking a lot of damage from all of those attacks too, for sure.
And it's also good to know that you are still very focused and that you're using all of your skills and all of your abilities to really do everything that you can too.
Okay, so now that we have all that information, and we also know that Barnaby is grappled and that Jack has made his attack, it's time to see what happens next with this big oh, yeah, uh-huh.
Well, the toad is definitely not happy. He's not looking healthy, but he's definitely still alive, and that brings us to the top of round 5, where it'll be Finn's turn once again.
Okay, yeah, that's a really great point. And it's true that the toad is still in the fight, even after all of that damage.
Right, and it does seem that this male toad is a little tougher than the female one we fought before too. And also, it's now time for Finn to take the lead again.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that the giant toad is still alive and kicking, and now that it's the top of round 5, it's time for Finn to go again, for sure, right?
Yeah, and with Barnaby still grappled and Jack trying to get back into the fight, it is going to be up to Finn to make a big move and to help out as well.
And also that she now has a really great opportunity to use all of those skills that we have been talking about and all of those new levels, too.
Okay, so as Finn, and knowing that it is my turn again, I'm going to try and find a good position to do the most damage that I can.
Right, and also you need to make sure that you are also safe, too, so that the toad doesn't try to use that tongue on you as well, too. Oh, go for it.
Well, we established that Finn's going to be able to do the sneak attack because the toad's involved with a grapple. So see if you hit, and if so, roll it up as damage for a sneak attack.
Okay, yeah, that's right. And it's good to remember that detail about the sneak attack. You are correct.
Right, and it's true, with the toad grappling Barnaby, that does create the perfect opportunity for Finn to use that sneak attack, for sure.
So you're saying that since the toad is engaged with Barnaby, then Finn is going to be able to do that sneak attack, and it is time to see what happens now.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I'm ready to move his fin and also to try to do some serious damage to that giant toad for real this time too.
Okay, so as Finn, you're moving into position, and you're about to attack with your dagger and see how much damage you can do, right?
Right, so I'm going to attack, and I rolled a 17, and with my dexterity modifier, that's a 21, and that will hit the toad for sure.
Okay, that is a really solid hit, and now that you've managed to hit, it is time to roll up the damage and to see what you get to.
And since I have that sneak attack, that also means I will have all of those extra damage dice to add into the mix too, so let's roll all of that for real.
So you rolled a 17 to hit, which is great, and now it's time to roll for the base damage and also for those 2 extra d6 for the sneak attack damage too, right?
Right, so for my base damage with that dagger, I rolled a 3, and then for my sneak attack, I rolled a 5 and a 2, so that makes 10 damage. And then with the +4, that's a total of 14 damage for this attack.
Okay, that is another really great hit, and you have done a total of 14 damage to the toad with that attack and also with that sneak attack too.
And although it's good to remember that I did manage to move into a better position and also to get that sneak attack in too, and so that worked out well.
And also, all of that damage, you have now set the stage for Barnaby to try and break free from him that tongue, and also to see what he's going to do next as well, too.
So now that Finn has made her move, it is now time for Barnaby to see what he is going to do with that tongue still around him, and also what he's going to do with that too.
Right, and also...
Oh, yeah.
Well, Barnaby, again, is in a position where the only thing he can do is make his strength save to see if he can break free from this tongue. Now, in D&D 5e, you actually get different bonuses on saves than you would your normal bonuses from your stats. As a fighter, does Finn get any bonus points there? I mean, not Finn, Barnaby. As a fighter, does he get any bonus stats?
Oh, that's a really great question. And it's true that we need to be clear about how saves work and if anyone has bonuses there.
Yeah, you're right. It's important to understand if Finn gets any extra bonuses on saves, since we just talked about how powerful her attacks are, too.
So let's unpack this. You're saying that Barnaby is making a strength check to try to break free, and that you also... Oh, yeah. Go on.
No, so Barnaby is trying to make a strength save. So does Barnaby get any extra bonuses as a fighter when making strength saves?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good point. And it's true, we should see if Barnaby gets any extra bonuses to his strength saves as a fighter.
Right, and it's important to remember how those proficiencies work and how they may or may not be helpful for different checks and saves too, for sure.
So let's unpack this. You're asking if Barnaby gets any special bonuses as a fighter, specifically to help him with his strength saving throws, right?
And it's true, we need to check those details about his skills and also how they might help him in this moment, and also to see what he's able to do too.
Well, if we...
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
So the save bonuses are they're a class ability. So in 5e does the fighter get any bonuses to a strength save, and if not, what saves do they get bonuses to?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. And it's true, we should see if Barnaby gets any extra bonuses to his strength saves as a fighter.
Right, and it's important to remember how those proficiencies work and how they may or may not be helpful for different checks and saves too, for sure.
So let's unpack this. You're asking if Barnaby gets any special bonuses as a fighter, specifically to help him with his strength saving throws, right?
And also you want to know, if not strength saves, what saves do they get as a bonus? And that's a really good thing to think about before we keep going, for real.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's good to remember that proficiencies are tied to your class, and also that not everyone gets the same ones either.
Right, and that also makes you think about how your character can do different things, and also to make the right choices based on what they can do too.
Okay, so if we look at Barnaby's character sheet, it shows that Barnaby is proficient in strength saving throws and also in constitution saves too.
Right, and that means that he gets to add that proficiency bonus to those rolls as well, in addition to his strength modifier too.
And as a third level character, his proficiency bonus is a +2 and his strength modifier is a +3, which is a good addition to those rolls for sure.
So that means that Barnaby gets a +5 total on strength saving throws, but that also does not change what he does right now with this roll too.
Right, and we have already determined that he needs a 10 or higher to break free from that grapple as well too, so it's up to him now.
Okay, so now that...
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
And so, in other words, that means if he rolls anything higher than a 5, he's going to succeed in breaking that grapple.
That's a very clear way to put it. And yes, you're right. If Barnaby rolls anything higher than a 5 on that d20, then he's going to succeed in breaking free from that grapple.
Right, and that's also good to remember that it is his total that is important here, and also to see what that is going to be, too, when he makes that attempt for freedom now.
And with all of that in mind and that he needs to roll above a 5, it's time to see if he can finally pull himself free of that toad's tongue for real.
And also, it is important to remember that those numbers are a combination of his roll plus his +5 to his strength bonus, too, for sure.
So yeah, as Barnaby, you are still caught by that tongue, and you are remembering that you need a 10 or higher to escape, and also that you are ready to use all of your strength.
And, also that you are going to add all of that power to get free and also to get back into the fight, too, for sure.
So you're ready, you're focusing all of your strength, and also you are ready to roll and to see what happens next, too, with all of that effort.
Okay, so I just rolled a 12. And with my +5 strength bonus, that's a total of 17. So I have managed to pull away from that tongue again.
Wow, that's a really great roll, and you have managed to break free again, and it's clear you're not going to give up on this either, for sure.
And also that with that roll of 17, it also means that you have avoided that extra damage that you might have gotten from that tongue too.
Right, so you were able to use all of your strength and also to pull away at the very last moment, and also that it also shows how powerful you are too, for sure.
And with that,
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Good job. And with that, Jack's gonna come in with his short sword once again, using his hunter's mark ability. He's still focused and concentrated, and he rolls an 18, or Justin, he rolls a 14 plus 4, that brings him up to 18, and he is gonna definitely hit. It does 7 points of damage, and that's enough to finally take this second toad down.
okay, yeah, that's awesome. And it's great to hear that Jack has managed to get a solid hit in after that broken bow.
You're right, and it sounds like he was really focused, and that hunter's mark ability, it's really helping him to do what needs to be done for sure.
So you're saying that Jack is going to attack with his short sword and with that hunter's mark, and he's rolled a 14 plus 4 to hit for a total of 18, and he has managed to hit the toad, right?
Right, and also that he's done 7 points of damage, and also that is enough to take down that toad for real this time.
And that's amazing. And it's also cool to see that he used all of those skills, even with that broken bow, to make that attack count and bring down that toad, for sure.
It's like even with that setback, he still found a way to help out and to get that damage in too, and that is all that we could ask for.
And also with that, we can say that the second giant toad is now down, and that you've all managed to survive that encounter and are ready to move on, too. Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
Well, before they start marching off to the town, Jack searches through the boggy water to find his bow. That only the string was broken, and the actual bow itself was still all right. And with a perception of 14, he manages to figure out where he dropped it and fishes it out of the bog. And then you guys are ready to move on to the town, unless you want to do something with these dead toads.
Oh, that's a really interesting move, and it's good to see Jack is resourceful even after all that action.
Yeah, it's like he's not leaving that broken bow behind, but he's going to see if there is anything he can salvage, too.
So you're saying that before you head to Salt Marsh, Jack is going to search for his bow in the water, and that you want to see if he finds anything, right?
And it's also good that you remember that we did say it fell into the water, and now he's going to try and get it back, too.
And that perception of 14, it also does give him a chance to find something that is hidden in that muddy water, too, as well.
Okay, so with that roll of 14, Jack, you are searching through that boggy water, and also you are looking for your bow as well, too.
And as you carefully make your way through the water, you can see your bow there in the mud, but you also notice that the string is broken for sure.
Right. It's definitely not usable in its current state, but you are right. The bow itself is still intact and also in pretty good shape, too, for sure.
So you pull your bow out of the water and you realize that it's not completely useless, as you can probably get a new string and get it back to working order, too, if needed.
And now you have that broken bow, but at least you have recovered it, and you are ready to continue your journey towards Salt Marsh as well, too. Ah, yeah.
And while digging around in the water, does he find anything else of value or interest?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, and it's true that you might find something else while searching through that water, too.
Yeah, it's like now that you're taking the time to look, what else is lurching down there in that muddy water for real?
So you're asking if Jack finds anything else of value or interest while he's searching for his bow, right?
And also that since he got that good roll, he might notice something else that is hidden down there too.
Well, as Jack is searching for his bow and carefully feeling around in that muddy water, he does also find something else, too.
Yeah, and you can tell it's not just some random debris, but that it actually feels like something that is made by hand and is also a little bit different too.
And when you pull it out of the water, you see that it is a small silver locket, and it is covered in mud, and also some green slime, too, from that swamp.
And as you clean it off a little bit, you can see that it is engraved with some kind of a symbol, and also you can see that it does open too as well.
Right, and with that, we can say that Jack has found something else other than his bow, and it is now a small silver locket that you have found in the water, too.
And also that it seems that this locket is something that you might be able to use, or that you might want to keep with you as well, for real.
Okay, so now that we've seen that you have found that silver locket and that you are also ready to move on, it's time to get back to the game, too.
Right, and now that you have that item, you are all ready to step out of the water and also to start making your way to that port town of Saltmarsh too, for sure. Hey, yeah, what's up?
And what about these toads? I mean, they gotta be worth something, right? Or toad legs, some meat, some skins. There's anything we can pull off of this thing for value?
That's a very practical question, and it's true, you might as well see if those toads are worth anything after all that effort.
Yeah, it's like you've taken down these creatures, so is there anything you can get from them, too? Or any value that can be gained there, too?
So you're asking if you can salvage anything from the giant toads, like their legs, meat, or skins, and if they might be worth something, right?
And, it's a good idea to see if you can get some value from those toads, because you never know what might be useful, too, as well.
Well, if we connect that to the bigger picture, the monster compendium doesn't really mention if those toads have any valuable parts, so they might not have anything we can use.
Right, doesn't say anything about their meat or their skin or their legs have any special properties, or if they're worth anything either.
But, it is possible that someone might buy their skin or some other parts of the body for some strange purposes too. You never know.
Yeah, like maybe a witch or an alchemist might want those toad legs or that skin for some kind of potion or some other kind of magic item too. Oh, go for it.
Well, I think maybe I'll cut the tongues out, right? That's their special thing, right? So I'll cut the tongues out, maybe make rope out of it or something.
Oh, that's a very creative idea. And it's true, those tongues are a pretty unique feature of those giant toads.
Yeah, it's like if anything is valuable, it might be those giant tongues, and you could certainly try to find a use for them.
So you're thinking of, yep, go on.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking maybe I'll use one of those tongues as a new bowstring.
Oh, that's a really inventive idea, and it's certainly thinking outside the box to try that with a tongue.
Yeah, it's true. And it's fascinating that you're seeing a use for that tongue and also that you are thinking of it as a replacement for your bowstring too.
So you're thinking that instead of just using those tongues for selling or some potion, you could use one as a new bowstring, right?
Right. It's like you're not letting any part of that monster go to waste, and you are finding a practical use for it too, for sure.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that's a great way to use what you have to help you in your journey and to be ready for anything as well.
And also, it is good to remember that you have those skills with survival, so that means that you can take advantage of the environment around you too, for sure.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's get back to the game and see what happens as you try to use that tongue as a new bowstring and how you are going to do all of that too.
Right. So you are taking out. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna take one of them and just throw it in my backpack, and the other one I'm gonna stretch it out on the bow, and hopefully it'll dry and stretch out, and become a good whatever, a ligament that I can use for a bowstring as we march into the city. Maybe once we get into the city of Saltmarsh, we can find some salt and use that to do a proper tanning on these animal parts.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty practical approach, and it's cool to see you're thinking ahead with those toad tongues.
Right. It's like you're taking what you can get and seeing how you can make the most of it, and also you're not wasting anything.
So you're going to throw one of the tongues in your backpack, and you're going to try to stretch out the other one on your bow, and also to make a bowstring too, right?
Yeah, and you're hoping that it will dry and stretch and also be useful as a replacement and that you can properly treat it when you get to Salt Marsh too.
And, if we think about it, that could be a good way to make the most of that situation and also to get Jack's bow back into working order as well.
Right, and it's good that you're also remembering that you'll need salt to properly tan those animal parts, and you can maybe find that in Salt Marsh as well too.
Okay, so with that in mind, and you've now got that bowstring idea in place, what are you going to do next and how would you try to make that all work?
Oh, go for it.
So I guess next we're going to finally make it through these marshes and we get to the town of Salt Marsh. So Dungeon Masters, give us your usual beautiful cinematic description as we march our way into the town of Salt Marsh.
Okay, yeah, I hear you, and it's time to finally leave that marsh behind and get to Salt Marsh.
Right, and it's good to know that you're excited for that and also that we will get to that town now too.
So you're saying that you want us to give you a vivid description as you finally make your way into the town of Salt Marsh, right?
And also that it's like you are ready to see what the town is like after all of this action and after that big fight.
Okay, so with all of that in mind, and you have all survived those toads, it's time for us to set the scene and also to make our way into Salt Marsh for you now.
Right, so as you all start to walk out of the marsh, the ground gets a little more solid under your feet, and you can see that the terrain is starting to change too.
And the air seems to clear up a little bit, and you can also start to smell the salt in the air from the sea that is not too far away now, too.
And you can also start to hear the distant sounds of seagulls and also the gentle lapping of the waves too as you're moving towards the coast.
And as you get closer, you begin to see the first signs of civilization, and the trees begin to thin out, and also to see the small buildings in the distance, too.
Right, and you see some small wooden structures and also some fishing boats along the shore, and that does mean that this town is very close now, for sure.
And then the path finally opens up, and you see that you have arrived at Salt Marsh. And it is a small town built right on the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean.
And the buildings are mostly made of wood and stone, and they're all a bit weathered from the sea air, but also they look like they are still well used too, for sure.
And you can see a small harbor with a few fishing boats coming and going, and also that there are some seagulls flying overhead, too.
And you can smell the fish and also the smoke from some distant chimneys, and also all of those sounds of a town that is very busy too, as well.
And there are people walking about, going to and from, and they're all wearing simple clothes, and also some of them are also carrying fishing nets and some tools, too.
And it is definitely a port town, and you can tell that most of the people here, they make their living from the sea too, and it seems a little more lived in than other towns you have been to.
And as you walk through the streets, you can hear the sounds of people talking and also of those seagulls, too. And it's also a nice change from the silence of the marsh and also from those sounds of the chanting as well, too.
And you notice that there are a few taverns and shops too, and also that there are also some small homes and some gardens, and it seems like it is a very welcoming place as well too, for sure.
So, yeah, that's Salt Marsh, and it's also good to see that you finally made it to the town and that you've also done it with all of that new power, too.
And now that you have finally arrived, it is time to see what is waiting for you here, and also to see what will come next as well.
Okay, so now that we've given you that description and you know what you are seeing, it's time for us to wrap things up and to see what happens next time.
And now that we have done all of that, we can say that you have made it through the marsh and also that you have arrived in Salt Marsh, and we hope you are ready for what comes next.
So we'll see you all next time, and we're excited to see what kind of adventure awaits you in Salt Marsh, and also with all of that knowledge that you have gained as well, too.
And also, now that you have made all of these choices and you have also done all of these things, you are ready to explore that town, and we will see you there next time too.
And also, we do want to remind you to check us out on the Trips 2012 YouTube channel, where you can also get all of the Greyhawk PDFs and also all of the previous episodes, too, for more adventures there.
And also, we release new episodes every Friday at 6 p.m. And also, you can find all of that other content on Mondays, too, for even more great adventures and excitement as well, too.
So now that we have finally reached this point, it is time for us to say goodbye, and also that we thank you all for joining us today as well.
And until then, keep those dice rolling and also keep those adventures exciting, and we'll see you all again